So Fossil Free Penn is a group that is calling for Penn's Board of Trustees, who control Penn's money, to divest from the fossil fuel industry. And divestment is removing all investments. I think by now we should all know that climate change is happening and it's human-induced, and pretty much the biggest contributor to that is extracting fossil fuels from the ground and refining them and using them.
I believe this is such a necessary cause, and without people working to fix it, so many people are already suffering and so many more people are going to suffer if sea level continues to rise, if droughts intensify. Entire nations are going to be suffering. Like, there's entire cities sinking already.
I'm personally a student outreach coordinator, so I work on organizing the student body. There's also faculty and alumni coordinators and trustee coordinators, and they try and talk to the trustees to get them particularly to support fossil fuel divestment. And through that, we hope that eventually the Board of Trustees will decide to remove all investments from fossil fuels. We estimate that they have over $300 million invested in the fossil fuel industry, so that's a lot of money that would not be invested and would hopefully continue the traction of institutions and places divesting from fossil fuels. The university is publicly of the opinion that climate change is bad, but the idea of the Board of Trustees investing Penn's funds into fossil fuels is that it's purely to make money, and that it shouldn't have to be clouded by moral arguments. But basically, they're kind of like, nope, we're not going to do this because this shouldn't have to be like a political move, but like investing in fossil fuels is a political thing to begin with. It's kind of hard to really figure out why they don't want to do it, because they're very hard to communicate with, because the Board of Trustees is extremely autonomous from the rest of the university, and we're trying to overcome that. I mean, they just don't want to converse with us at all. We've been trying so hard to get them to talk to us. Out of about 60 trustees, we've talked to 4, and we're constantly like, hey, let's talk. We go to their meetings, they never have any open dialogue, even though they're public meetings. They're like, you have to stand behind like a velvet rope that's like guarding the trustees, and the whole meeting is completely rehearsed. Like, they never decide they never actually discuss things. It's all like, you know, it's going to happen before you go in there. And yeah, they're like not at all dependent on like university opinions. Like, even if all the faculty were like, we want to divest from fossil fuels, they could just ignore that. The most recent development is, when is this being like shown to the class?
Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, that'll work. So probably announcing this on Sunday, but we submitted a 50-page proposal on divestment from coal and tar sands that we worked on over the summer, like very well researched for both financial and moral arguments on why we should divest from coal and tar sands specifically, because they're like some of the most like high investment, like high carbon fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are like artificially cheap because there's a lot of government subsidies. In the proposal, I personally wrote on how the fossil fuel industry dampers the democratic process through lobbying, where they fund like anti-climate scientists, think tanks. They lobby for more subsidies on the fossil fuel industry, and so it's super cheap, even though it's a very expensive like industry to run, and it's just still going because of institutions like Penn that will continually invest and fund them, because it's like a good investment, which is kind of a cyclical process. They recently said that our proposal did not warrant any further consideration. So now we're kind of like, what do we do now? Because the only institutional way for us to divest, for the Board of Trustees to divest, is for people to submit a proposal and then have it be considered and then voted for. But they really cut that at the cord. A few years ago, there was a proposal that was for divestment of all fossil fuels, and that went through the steering committee and didn't pass the Board of Trustees, but this time they're just like, we're not considering this anymore, which is terrifying, like especially after what I've noticed in the last month has been like so much more attention to like how climate change is actually affecting things, like with all the hurricanes that we can now prove are like way worse because of climate change. And that IPCC report, that's like, we have about 12 years to fix climate change or else like civilization will kind of collapse. And they're like, nope, we don't want to divest from coal and tar sands.
I can't say that I think we're at the point where people are going to, all work together to help stop climate change, but I'm hopeful in the fact that I firmly believe that these changes are what needs to happen, and if they need to happen, then they will happen. It's just a matter of getting these changes done as fast as they can so they have the least amount of harm before, it's never going to be too late, but before it gets worse than it already is. Environmental issues affect absolutely everything. So wherever you are in life, there's some way that you can work to help the environment.